All right, good morning, everyone. I will go ahead and open up this EDA meeting here on the morning of Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. Would you please call the roll?
I got one right here.
Oh, got one? Okay, perfect.
Beezer.
Here.
Grasula.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kirsch.
Here.
O'Day.
Here.
Sandy. Yeager.
Yes. Thank you. So this will be a roundtable style discussion. Won't be super formal here. Feel free to just jump in the conversation anytime you like, and we'll just kind of have you kind of run us down the list here a little bit, if you would, please, Danny.
So what I'm kind of thinking for how we do this today, I'll go through the budget and where we're looking at with the EDA and where that stands for 2025. And then after that, we have kind of the four sections. We'll talk about Washington Street, childcare center, facade, signage. I think ask questions during that time, have discussions, and then I think towards the end, at the very end, kind of talk about ideas of where you'd like to see that funding go towards. So rather than allocating it on the first one or the second one, kind of maybe hear every section, and then towards the end there, then we can figure out, we can't do any motions or anything like that, but I can get some general feedback on where the EDA would like to go with that. So,
Yep.
So with that, included a budgetary item there. City Council approved $186,812 for the 2025 Brainerd EDA at the December 5th EDA meeting. Staff recommend continuing with the current consultants. The EDA elected to fully fund all 5 contracts, and based on the budget, the EDA has a net revenue for this year of $19,362. Staff did recommend when the EDA was going through the budget in 2024 for 2025 that $15,000 should be allocated in the budget for this year for grants, with that grant programming to be determined at essentially this future meeting. And then the projected unassigned fund balance for this year is $103,312. There is still one facade grant that hasn't gone out yet, and that was for the one on 4th Street Northwest here, so that one still would be coming out of the fund balance. And then with that, based on the city policy, again, we don't have an EDA policy for the fund balance, but if you were to follow the range that the city has, EDA should keep somewhere between $54,000 and $91,000 for budgeted expenditures of the $182,000. So with that, does not look like Tyler's here. He was kind of expecting to show up to talk about the mitigation plan, so I'll let Marie kind of introduce that one. She's been really working with Tyler and Matt from the chamber.
Yeah, I guess kind of to go along with, there was the MnDOT had their meeting a couple weeks ago, and I guess I didn't go to the other public one too, but just kind of re-spurred the conversation around like what sort of mitigation plan we might want to put together just to help businesses manage and deal with the construction project. So Matt and Tyler kind of put this proposal together, and kind of a lot of it's based on just looking at what other cities have done. I know, was it Alexandria that came and presented? And I had pulled some stuff from the Minnesota Main Streets. They had kind of some sample mitigation plans. But yeah, it's kind of, the first kind of piece of it is building kind of a brand around it, just so that the community and businesses are aware of the project. And then kind of creating a communication network, just so businesses and the community in general like is aware of what's going on. Having really clear communication about what the closures are and how you can access businesses and that sort of stuff. Just so, again, we're helping these businesses get through this difficult time when there's going to be not as great of access to their businesses. And then we kind of talked about some other programming that could go along with that, potentially offering some different types of workshops, like helping businesses beef up maybe their social media plans so that they're communicating better with their customers about what stuff is going on and how they can continue shopping there during construction. And then, yeah, a part of that too would be figuring out if the EDA or through like just consolidating some sort of funding source could offer like a facade grant program or just something to help these businesses. Everything's getting torn up right now anyways. It'd be a great time for businesses to invest in new signage and different things for the frontage of their building, so that when the construction's done, it's looking really nice and clean throughout that corridor. So I know, Tyler and Matt kind of pulled together just a rough budget, just to kind of get some numbers in front of us. And I think would be a partnership across the community, just pulling in resources where we can find them. I feel pretty strongly that EDA should be a major contributor to this and helping with this, just because it's impacting such a huge part of our business community. But yeah, that's kind of my summary of it. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts or questions.
Yeah, I know when I spoke with Matt, you know, he's hoping with this outreach here to really try to put a positive spin on this. You know, certainly there's going to be impacts to businesses, Brainerd businesses specifically with the 210 project here. And, you know, certainly negative aspects of that, of, you know, hoping that businesses continue to thrive during this construction project. But I know he's looking to really try to put a positive spin on this through this outreach program, that this is going to be a nice project and really a benefit to Brainerd when it's done. So that's, I think, something that he's really hoping to come out of this outreach as well.
Yeah, I just see it as a way for EDA to be more active too, and for businesses to see like how EDA is helping businesses get through these difficult situations like this, and just I see it as for the future of development in that corridor. If developers can see like, wow, like the city and the EDA is really supportive of businesses, that's gonna really kind of I think be encouraging to developers to want to come in and fill in, you know, continue to develop that area. So I see it as being kind of a more strategic, long-term planning thing, not only just being something that's specifically targeting this construction project.
You see, this is a pretty preliminary budget that Matt and Tyler put together. You'll see kind of a little higher cost in 2026, getting some of the things launched and getting things going. Projected potentially $90,000, $65,000 in 2027. One of the biggest ones is the business liaison. Thoughts behind that is that person would be somebody that businesses could reach out and at, you know, kind of at all times would be the go-between if there's issues or anything that they can work through to help their businesses, and then that'd be the contact between the businesses and MnDOT. You know, kind of more of a private person that's not involved either, you know, directly with the project, somebody that's more that third party. So that's one of the bigger expenses in there. I know I did talk with, oh, Tyler's here. I don't know if you have anything to add on this one, Tyler?
Just walking in, probably not, but I will.
Sounds good. Maybe just for questions for Tyler.
Yeah.
We've gone through a lot of what the proposal is here. You know, certainly talking with Matt, trying to figure out funding. You know, I think, you know, certainly they're going to be doing some funding. I think they'll be looking at businesses. I know they're potentially reaching out to Deed. So then, you know, some of the questions, you know, later on when we do look at budget, does the EDA want to be involved, you know, allocating some budget to potentially this project here. So kind of, you know, certainly can make some comments now on that, and we can figure, you know, kind of the details out later. So certainly not, you know, not expecting the EDA to, you know, fund everything. So
I think the biggest thing for us in this is you know, air quotes, who owns the employee, right? If it is an employee, where do they house themselves? Where does the majority of the funding come from? Where does the direction come from? There's a few things that we've met on a few times with. I think there's a handful of moving parts that need to be vetted out as we get a little bit farther down the road. And but we can talk about this as we move along. But it's, you know, this is just a kicking off point.
So yeah, so you'll see in the proposal, what the Chamber and Bladek are looking for is kind of reactions to the proposed mitigation strategies, additional ideas to help businesses navigate construction successfully, the level of EDA involvement and any potential funding support, and suggestions for additional funding sources or partnerships.
I do have one question. On the business liaison, would that be 100% of their time? For the
Really
forwarding?
good question. Don't know that yet. I think that's something we'd have to work out. I personally, I can't justify owning the employee. I don't know that. I think Matt could, and if he did, I would think there would be additional chamber responsibilities that would come with that. But I don't know. Matt and I haven't gotten to that level with this yet. But it's a really good question, and I think we can talk through.
Even if it was like 80%, just, I think it'd be nice for us to know what that 40,000 is buying.
For sure. And what I came back to Matt with, and part of my challenge with this is, what does this employee do? Construction season ends before construction season starts again. You know, is it, especially as we get into year 2, is it just updating, here's the next layer, but I don't know that that's somebody's full-time job.
Okay.
It couldn't be, to be honest with you.
if they are, they're making 20 grand a year.
100%. Yeah. So that's my, laying this out, I understand the concept, and we understand the concept, and conversations that we've had with Marie and with Nick and others, it's, putting something out there, let's see where this goes, and, the other side of it is, where does the funding come from? He's got a big number attached to this.
Because the MnDOT has money for signage and has some money, my understanding is there is some money for signage. I could be wrong about that, but not sure what that signage is, if that just means traffic direction signage, that, but MnDOT's not kicking in anything on this, as far as we know, right?
I don't think they've committed anything to that.
Yeah.
They could, but that would be at their discretion.
Yeah, so I've asked that same question several times at the MnDOT meetings, just how, is there money set aside for any of this type of thing? And it's kind of the same answer. There could be, like, we've got some money that's earmarked for signage, but I want to get an idea if that's buying billboards, if that's buying.
Jesse, you can maybe elaborate. I know I've seen some, in some cases with these road projects, it might be a small
Yep.
sign, little thing, go this way
Yep.
to get to this business.
Yep.
Nothing elaborate.
Yep.
Yeah, they'll include stuff for like called wayfinding during construction, but it'll be pretty generic because they don't want to get too specific, especially since it's going to change
Yep.
regularly through the project. So they don't want to get too crazy specific with that. In regards to a person, they usually leave that up to the district and what available funds that they have, because every district has different priorities too and
You mean
available funding.
the liaison?
Yeah, correct, yep. So if they have some available funding, and they usually leave some additional funds to be used on like big projects like this for certain contingencies, whether that be construction-related contingencies or it could be something like this. So as I think they develop the 90% plan estimate, or I think the 60% plan estimate, I think things will get a lot clearer of what their level of financial commitment to the project's going to be and what they'll have for a little bit more clearer idea of funds available. That might help clarify what their availability to commit some additional funding to something like this would be.
I think Marie kind of had a good idea too, potentially. It wouldn't be, really for this year's funds, but when we're thinking of budgetary for 2026, 2027, possibly the facade grant or signage grant program could be targeted to that exact section that's being shut down. So something to think about in the future.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see. So, yeah, just the EDA funding, all or at least part of like a facade grant, and then kicking in some sort of funding into this pool of funding that's going towards this kind of what's laid out in this budget here.
Do you know if you have any commitments on this yet? They're still in the early
Correct.
stages of the
Yeah. We've also been told that there's, that a lot of times that there's a portion of the funding that's built into the awarded contracted company for work like this. So they have someone assigned it, so there's funding as they put their bids in, there's dollar amounts in there that are assigned to something like this, from a liaison standpoint or communication specialist as it goes through this, but it really depends on who the bid, depends on who's.
That might be the contractors'
Contractors, yeah.
communication liaison, so if we wanted somebody,
That'd be their project manager or their superintendent kind of something.
it might be
public
somebody even
relations.
separate from that, like an office staff person that kind of goes between the site project manager to maybe communicating with our liaison.
System 2 project.
Yeah, I think the feedback I have heard at most of the meetings, and it's always a point of frustration communicating with business owners. I know this from trying to recruit business owners to participate in things. They don't read their emails, they don't read the mail, or they got a lot of stuff going on. So it's just, that's gonna be a key piece, is having somebody local that can connect with these business owners, even in person, just to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. And setting the expectation with business owners too, that they need to be engaging with whatever communication channel we set up, whether it's like a social media page or a website or whatever. But just building that relationship so people know who the point of contact is and know who to go to with questions and that sort of stuff.
Otherwise, they're just gonna be calling the city hall every day, so.
I don't think there's any question whether the EDA should be involved or not. I think we should be involved. But we have 5 other items. So I think we should hear the rest of them and prioritize those. And see what kind of funding we have to play with. Are we saying we have 54,000?
Yeah,
About 100?
Got 100 in the, 103 in the general fund, about 100. And then somewhere between, if you look at the city policy for what we need for the next year to fund kind of the first expenditures of the year, should keep somewhere between 50 and 90,000.
Okay. So 90,000 for the total project. Year one, and then 50 the second.
Oh, that's year one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're thinking we could possibly get some grant funding.
Certainly, yeah, we're gonna reach out to DEED to see if they have anything, continue to work with MnDOT to see if they have anything, businesses, and then, yeah, we'll see if there's any other ideas, I don't
What's
know.
the latest we would have to know how much we would be contributing to that? Do we have until December to decide, to wait for grant funding?
Yeah, I don't know what Matt was thinking for like timeline for like how soon you need to get rolling on
Yeah.
stuff, but.
And I can let him know some of the general comments that come out of this meeting, so they can start to kind of build around that, you know, what is everybody kind of thinking a little bit, and then at the next meeting, you know, I'd probably bring something, if the EDA does seem generally interested here, a little bit more of a preliminary dedication of funds, to the next meeting.
And I think sooner than later, so they can secure other funding and then scale the project
Based on that.
Yep.
The project's getting let in January, so obviously the sooner you start lining things up and getting yourself prepared before that, makes it just a little bit more organized rather than scrambling at the end before construction.
Sounds good. Eric, I don't know, maybe I'll give
We'll
you.
go through, just keep going down the list here.
Yep,
and
we'll
then-
keep going down the list here. Eric is here to talk about the streetscape.
Yeah, sure. So just kind of from the HRA's perspective, what we are gonna try to hopefully secure some funding for the city for this project. It's gonna be kind of a two-part. The first part's gonna be, we're hopeful to get council approval to submit our full application to the DEED Small Cities Development Program. We put a pre-application in the fall, which the council supported. We were deemed competitive. DEED always says you're non-competitive, marginally competitive, or competitive. We did get into the competitive bucket this year, which is good. Usually means that we will have a very good opportunity to secure some funding. Typically, what the HRA does when we're applying for small cities is we're out there trying to get housing rehab. And that is still the intent for the Washington Street corridor, but we do have a southeast Brainerd grant open currently for housing rehab. And when we were talking with our DEED reps, they strongly suggested that we do not commingle those. The likelihood of us getting funding for housing grant in 2026 would be mitigated because we've got an open grant. That grant closes at the end of 26. We could likely apply for one in 27 to get funded. So knowing that it's a 2-year build cycle for the reconstruction, we still think we've got an opportunity on the second year to get some funding for housing and redevelopment or rehab. So that's preliminary, the plan for this year 2. Year 1, we are still able to get funding potentially for streetscape, something that we've never applied for before. It is something allowable in there, and when we talk streetscape specifically for this project, it's for decorative lighting. So I know Jesse has been working with our staff quite a bit on getting cost estimates, and Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the city's portion of the lighting down that corridor is around 1.4 million. Some of it's gonna be shared with MnDOT, so 1.4 is what the outlay would be for the city,
Give or
roughly.
take. Yeah.
We can apply for up to 600,000, and if we get fully funded, that's a huge chunk of that 1.4 million that the city needs. Very, very hopeful that we'll get that. We're very enthused that we got to be competitive, or at least into that bucket. We'll be in front of council, I believe, on Monday for a public hearing, just to discuss or have the public provide any input on that grant application, and then if the council sees fit to let us apply for that, we will do that, and the deadline for application is April 16th. Typically find out August, September on any fundings, but that would just be, I think, a good opportunity for us to hopefully secure some funding for this project. And then in year 2, Again, would be this coming fall, we would likely be ramping up for a pre-application, again, for that housing sector throughout that corridor. The good thing is DEED likes to couple projects together, so the fact that the city and MnDOT are working on the reconstruction, that's why we likely are deemed very competitive at this point. They like to throw their funding behind other projects to obviously expand and extend their reach for their dollars. So that's the plan from our side of things. Hopefully things go smoothly and we can secure a good amount of funding, at least to offset some of the outlays that the city would have to do.
So is that streetscape funding just like Washington?
Yeah, it would just be on the
corridor, or,
Washington
like,
corridor.
Around, like, would it extend out to like
Wouldn't-
downtown or just along Washington?
Yeah, just along that Washington corridor.
Would that cover like, I know, I can't remember what was decided on for the like light posts, but didn't we weren't able to get ones that would allow banners on them? Is that like a possibility still, or?
That was the direction of council's, the new style is not to have banners on them. So it's that cafe style, commercial corridor lighting. So it is more of a decorative compared to like the MnDOT stand that you see with the overarching one. But we've also included with that application some other streetscape items like the decorative railing that's gonna go on the bridge. Some of the decorative railing that we're anticipating kind of in front of the mall here by 6th. So some other enhancements too, and we've really kind of pitched this to the Small Cities Grant group as having a very high community impact. That's really the push behind this improvements to this corridor is it's going to make it much more pedestrian friendly, much more pedestrian attractive, not just chunk highway moving cars. It's intended to be more than that.
So we already kind of have some projects lined up for what that funding would get used for.
It's all kind of part of this project, and that was kind of the impetus of this grant is just to kind of cover more of the city's share of that cost.
I just know because it takes a long time to get stuff lined up for ordering supplies and materials and stuff. So I'm just wondering with the timing of when we get the funding, is it like that lined up right so that we're not getting the funding and then scrambling to try to get whatever.
I'm not sure
set
when
up for that.
the funding would be. Usually when it comes to like a MnDOT project, we end up, once they get the bids, they essentially send us a bill for X amount % of the cost. We pay MnDOT ahead, they take out of that, and then we close it out at the end. So odds are, the Small Cities Grant, we would get reimbursed after paying MnDOT that first chunk.
Questions?
All right.
That one sounds less expensive for us.
Yeah.
We're hoping that's the impact.
For us? Well, for Brainerd.
Us being EDA.
Yeah, EDA, it's very
The
inexpensive
local
for
ones.
the EDA.
All right, on to the next one, James.
Yeah, so next one is improve signage in downtown and along Washington Street. So staff has received some complaints about signage aesthetics in some of our corridors. I put a couple pictures below. We're seeing kind of more and more vinyl signage. Right now our zoning code kind of really regulates kind of location of the signage, size of the signage, but doesn't have a lot of design standards for signage. So we are getting complaints, kind of this temporary, stuff that kind of gets thrown up real fast versus, nice signage that's, meant to be more permanent. The other thing that I've gotten some complaints on is signage that's kind of just hand painted, very haphazardly and fast. I don't know how that could potentially be worked in, your design standards potentially. It still meets, even if you took vinyl signage away, there's potential for, somebody to just spray paint stuff or do signage pretty quickly. So that was also
We
another
just had
complaint.
one of those, right?
What's that?
Like last summer, there was a business that was right on Washington Street with
Yeah,
a spray painted sign.
it's still there.
It's still there?
Yep,
Okay.
and one of the businesses. So there's a complaint on that one as well.
Are you sure you
Yeah, so I don't know what a potential code to prohibit something like that would be, but certainly vinyl signage, we can, regulate materials that are used on it. So brought it here for some discussion. I'd like to hear if the EDA would like planning commission to work on this. I'd let the planning commission know. And then also potentially when we're looking at funding, what does it look like this year? Is there some type of 50% matching grant like the facade improvement grant was? Maybe like a $1,000 or $2,000 50% matching grant, or up to You know, you could potentially then look at, you know, maybe 15 signs that are improved in the city. So, you know, typical signage, if what we typically see with valuation, if you do it yourself, it's somewhere in the 500 to 1,000 range. If you hire somebody to do it, you're probably looking at 1,000 to 2,000, somewhere in there. Awnings are a little bit more expensive, typically considered in signage as well. So, especially, you know, the awning could be considered in here if they're actually putting their name on there. So that's kind of the idea behind that. So I guess I'll open it up. Marie, I don't know if you have any comments on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, just, it just comes down to like, just getting it to look aesthetically where it needs to be, so it looks like, you know, something where you wanna spend time and be coming to shop and that sort of thing. I don't wanna be like dragging down business owners. I know it's expensive, like signage is not cheap, and a lot of times business owners are focused on like, I just need to get people in the door. But I think if we can set up, like, whether it's, just revising the zoning code to enforce that more, and also just providing more resources to business owners of like how they can get signage that, is falling more within kind of the parameters that we're wanting to see down there. But nobody wants, it's a sticky situation because, again, I know like how much it costs to get like a decent looking sign, but to make sure we're like continuing to make it look good downtown and in the major corridors, and making sure we're not like bringing down property values and that sort of thing. It's just something business owners need to be focusing on more. I guess my question is like, what is existing in the code now, like that's enforceable, and like when it comes to like the vinyl signs and stuff, like what's like the permitting process, like because I know you have to pay.
Yeah,
like, a
you
permit
still come through a
fee
permitting
for
process with a
signage.
vinyl sign typically. You know, you have some eye hooks or something that would actually put it on the building. Darren would take a look at that. There's not much to look at with that. And then you're really looking at, typically what's allowed in most commercial districts is 15% of the facade of the building is allowed for signage. So it would meet that criteria, and then we don't have anything that says it has to be made out of wood or, you know, or this and that. So that is something that could be added, but right now it is not in the code. We'd have to work with the city attorney to figure out if you could retroactively enforce something like that, because typically, you know, when you create new code, you grandfather things in until a new signage would be put up. So we'd have to figure that out, and certainly, you know, if you're restricting something like this, but then also providing a grant, you know, that's something that, you know, could look good to businesses or help businesses, so.
And I guess I'm okay with like vinyl signs if it's like a temporary thing. So if like it's something where they're just putting it up for an event or something, like obviously we want to allow for that. But yeah, when it's like a vinyl sign that's just kind of stuck up on the building and is kind of serving as their permanent
Yep.
sign, that's where I guess.
Or maybe when they first move in, they can have it up for a month or
Like,
something
we need to
until they
have,
get permanent
like,
signage.
exceptions, or you know, like understand that when businesses are first getting up and running, they might need some sort of temporary signage. But yeah, it's when it's there for
Yep.
a longer period of time. And I guess just like other aesthetic issues I have with some of the stuff I see just like around my business is like storefronts that aren't like active retail, like not just having like signs where it's like, sorry, we're closed, and they've been closed for like months or years, and it's, you know, how do you enforce that of like, that's not really, it's not an active storefront, people are coming downtown, that just detracts and looks like the downtown isn't thriving. So I've seen some other examples of cities where like if it's like a storefront that's up for rent, or if it's just sitting vacant for a long time, you can do like, you know, like when you're in the mall and there's a business that's closed, they'll put like signage or something up in the, like a wrap or whatever, so that it's just, it's not like you're looking into an empty
Yep.
storefront. So that's something else I've seen too, but yeah, I guess that's getting farther away from the topic of signage. But yeah, just how do we get it looking nicer, and we're like attracting businesses down there rather than like making it look like, oh gee, this doesn't look like such a great place to set up shop, because nobody seems to care about how things are looking. But anyways.
I spoke to Aaron Howell about maybe like 2 months ago about this exact same conversation. anybody's driven through Crosby lately, their signage, they figured it out over there, so I was going to reach out to them to see what they did, because they for sure have some version of a signage protocol over there, an ordinance over there, so, and they are, it appears they are working retroactively, because
Okay.
when you drive through over there, they're, like, every single building on the main downtown is three-dimensional, backlit, no vinyl, and then there are some hand-painted ones, but they're more of the ones that are done, you know, by like artists, not just like a guy with a spray can, right? So, I'll reach out to the city over there and see what they've done. I'm
I
not
can as
feeling like
well.
this is something we need to create ourselves. There's other cities that have this already figured out, so, maybe between you and me, James, we can do a little digging and see if there's some cities that have something that's pre-canned that we could just roll out. What I always find like super frustrating about this whole conversation is like aesthetics is like highly subjective. One guy comes in, he's like, my vinyl sign looks awesome, I have no problems with this one or that one, and the next person looks at it and is like, that looks terrible. And that subjectivity is really the part that is really, really hard for, you know, working on the planning side and
Yep.
the design standard side is just how do you have conversations with two people who have completely different visions of what looks good versus looks bad. But I say we do a little digging and look at some other cities and see what they got. But if you get a chance in the meantime, drive through Crosby because they've got it figured out. Yeah.
And I just want to echo your comments. I've been in some communities with some very robust sign ordinances, and I think they work very well. And I do think that, from my seat anyways, I'm not on the board, but I do think it's important to the city of Brainerd and the city's future to have a pretty thoughtful, holistic sign ordinance. I do think it makes a big difference.
Especially if we can get some money to it too. I mean, that's a huge help because if you want to change the face of your city, you have to spend money. So you can't always come up to the wall of, oh, business, you know, don't have any money to make it look better. Somebody has to bear the pain somewhere to make things look better. It just costs money. Lines cost money, signage costs money, good luck, you know, exterior lighting, facade lighting, it all costs money. So at some point, you just gotta do it and enforce it, so, in my opinion.
The only thing I want to add is I like everyone's opinion. I want to have a better view of downtown and Brainerd at large, but I do want to make sure we have exceptions to the rule for if there's an event going on that's accepted. Like you can put parameters on, you can only have
exactly.
it up for 30 days or whatever. I just don't want it to be
And we already have
all or
temporary
none.
signage in our sign ordinance, so things can be added to that and amended, so.
I just want to make sure that, because there are circumstances where it's like, brand new business, or there's a special event going on, I don't
Yeah,
want
our
to.
sign ordinance
Construction
act,
sites, we can't crack down on high-tech construction.
so our sign ordinance is actually pretty robust. I wanna say it's 3 or 4 pages long. It's pretty complex. Even sign companies have to call to kinda sort through that, cause we have lots of different types of signs in there. But what we don't have is literally any design standards. So that's the part that probably really needs to be added.
Yeah, most of our stuff is size, width, height.
Size,
that kind of
width,
thing,
location,
projection,
yep.
I think we have no obscene colors.
We used to.
yeah. I don't think we do anymore. Yeah, I don't
Yep.
think we do, right? We
Yep,
don't,
I don't think we do,
Yeah.
yep.
And enforcement wise, does it usually fall on like the business owner or like the property owner? So like who are you fining or who?
Well, so any sign that gets put up is a building permit. So, if they put one without one, you know, most of the times they're not aware of it, so we send a letter, a stop work order, and then they have to go through that process. We never had to actually fine somebody because they put up a sign. We work with them to get them in compliance. So, you know, if somebody put up a
usually
vinyl
doing
sign and they
directly.
didn't, and let's say they didn't wanna follow the rules, didn't contact us, then it would be the citation process.
But you're,
That's on the
you're setting
building
the
owner.
business.
Yep.
It's the owner, yeah, not
Yep.
the tenant.
Not the tenant, yep.
All right, anything else on this one? I'll do some digging. James, you can help me.
Sounds good, yeah,
I
yep.
love that idea. Looking at that.
Yeah. Okay, commercial childcare centers.
Yeah, so something that staff was looking at doing here and certainly wanted to get accomplished before this workshop here was to tour some childcare centers around town here. We had Justin and Paul Sandy come along with me. Nick was there for 2 of them as well. So we did the YMCA Childcare Center, the new one that opened on Oak Street. We did TCC Head Start on Oak Street as well, kind of towards the end of Oak Street there as you get closer to Casey's. and then Stepping Stones, which is by the VA there. So it was kind of a really nice range of different types of child care centers. Head Start's a federally funded program, and in the last couple of years, they've expanded into other areas, Bethlehem Lutheran, and they've opened a couple other sites and expanded their own building as well to add additional childcare slots. I think when they were in here asking from the City Council and Planning Commission, they still have a pretty significant wait list, so there's still a need for additional space from them. Then the YMCA, certainly the EDA was a big part in getting that one funded as well through the Deed Main Street grant. I want to say probably $100,000 to $150,000 was awarded to them by the EDA for the that Deed Main Street grant that we had worked on a couple of years ago to get that project going. So it was great to tour that facility. It's something I hadn't seen before. I was there for the groundbreaking, but nobody really went into the building. So that was great to see, you know, what that looked like after the remodel. And then Stepping Stones we went to as well. That was just me and Justin on that one, but that's a pretty large facility. I'd say one of our largest commercial ones in the area. Certainly take care of a lot of children there. What was interesting on that one is they're right next to the Arboretum there, and the kids, they spend probably half the day at the Arboretum. So they'll try to get them out there to kind of do active learning, active play out there. So it was great to hear. I know the City Council and the City of Brainerd does help fund the ARB. So it was great to hear that a child care center and a business in Brainerd was heavily utilizing that facility. So some of the things that we did hear that were common issues, staffing is certainly an issue, especially entry-level positions, turnover, burnout, and wages. You have to have certain ratios within each room, but still the ratios are tough because it's, you know, each childcare slot, it's almost too expensive for parents at times, but what I guess the rate that they get for that childcare slot is not enough to pay some of their employees' wages comparable to, you know, certain other jobs within the city. So that's something that we kind of consistently heard from each one of these locations. Also, losing staff to federally funded or state-funded child care centers. So typically, you know, you have commercial, would lose it to maybe federal funding programs like a Head Start. Head Start could lose it to the school district. So, you know, kind of hearing that, one of the tougher ones were some of these commercial child care centers. Also, to open a new child care center or expand, there's a lot of state permitting and licensing requirements, a lot of fire code requirements for that, so it can be quite costly to expand child care or open new centers. So, you know, these places are always looking for places that they can partner with. Churches are often ones that they'll approach, and I think most of the churches in this area are utilizing that and helping. Trinity's one of them as well that has large numbers of children that attend that child care facility. Some of the other things, you know, from the commercial child care center, not a lot of major return on investment for child care centers. You know, a lot of breaking even each month and trying to figure out and navigating that between wages, food, and all that type of stuff. So certainly difficult in that aspect. And then trying to balance, you know, increase in tuition versus are you going to lose those kids or not. So definitely a balancing act for them. And then I already mentioned difficulty finding space for rent that meets licensing requirements. So I know Head Start, they're always looking for new spaces, but there's pretty limited space available that's going to easily meet the conditions of the fire code and building code. So with that, I kind of put together all the ones that I had found in here. Again, we reached out to 5 area child care centers in Brainerd, toured 3 of them. I know we have a lot of things that we're working on here between signage and facade improvement grants. We got the Washington Street project. So I don't know where, you know, considering future grants for childcare expansion would come in. Maybe that's, you know, a couple years down the road, something for the EDA to consider. But one thing that staff is kind of recommending here is similar to the River to Rails district, eliminating sack and whack and all permit fees for childcare centers in Brainerd. So I think that'd be something that would certainly be helpful. There's a lot of cost that goes into a new facility or expanding a facility, and that'd be one way that City of Brainerd could help. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. I don't know, Justin, if you have anything you want to add, or Nick?
I think you covered most of it. A lot of what we heard was wages, difficulty to expand, and then state requirements.
Yeah, the biggest issues I saw, heard over and over and over were regulations and facilities. Codes, commercial kitchens, it's very, very hard to get a good ROI. From a layperson listening to all of them talking, it seemed very hard to get a good ROI within this industry, because you're just so hamstrung by a lot of things.
And that's not something really we can control in
No,
the city, because
no,
that's
no, we can't.
federally controlled.
Yeah,
And it's not $200,000 a year problem, so we, as the EDA, there's not really anything we can do to solve the major problems facing.
We could lighten some of the load on taxes, sack and whack, or something like that hypothetically, but,
It's gonna get 10 cents an hour.
yeah. If it even trickles to that, yeah, probably.
We have another facility coming in, I don't remember how many childcare spots are in Country Manor.
Yep. Yeah, so that's gonna be a significant project, so,
And that's all Sack and Whack has been eliminated on that, I'm pretty sure, right?
not on, essentially deferred on that one.
Okay.
Yep,
We gave them a
so,
lot of breaks on different things.
We deferred a lot of
A
their,
lot of it is
Yeah.
until they're operating, then they'll pay.
yeah, that building permit, before any of this would get through, that building permit would probably be issued. I guess it'd be up to city council if they wanted to retroactively take that off or not, but it, certainly wouldn't be sack and whack for the entire facility, it would just be for the childcare
Yeah,
portion.
Speaking to Sack and Whack forgiveness, I'm fine for the YMCA, Washington Street corridor, places that have 14-inch pipe that are built up and can handle capacity to double or triple in size. But when you're talking edge of town development like Country Manor, there's literally no pipes there. You need money to put the pipes in. So
Exactly,
they
with the
have-
Country Manor,
or
we're gonna have
at least
to,
recover the money
yeah, we're gonna
somehow.
have to upgrade that booster system to be able to make that work. Yep,
Right, so that's where the
Direct
fee comes
cost.
in to make sense, instead of dinging everybody downtown to pay for Country Manor.
yep,
It's that Country
Right.
Manor pay for other edge of
even
town
if it's
development.
deferred, it's okay, but as long as it's getting paid for some way, right?
so maybe, potentially, maybe it's just, maybe just building permits, that could be an option too.
You mean on the child?
On the childcare, yeah, if it's not sack and whack through the whole thing, maybe sack and whack is still just the central business district, because we do have the new projects and the large pipes for that one. And then, potentially, maybe it's just building permits and then zoning permits as well, so. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Permitting fees, what are we talking? Like a couple
Depends on what
$100
it is. It can be
Yeah,
a lot.
if it's a new one, you're looking at, $1 million, $500,000 facility, $20,000, $30,000, something like that.
The school district paid us $500,000 for their $150 million construction in Brainerd.
In the river to rails, it's basically nothing, right? There's,
River to Rails is you take away $150,000, so you could also, emulate what we have there. You take $150,000 off the valuation. So if you were to just do, say, a tenant build out, you're probably gonna be looking, I wanna say the YMCA was still in that $700 to $1 million just to do that project, to remodel everything. So, some smaller sites like Bethlehem, that was, and I know when TCC expanded their two building, those were under $100,000. So if you're doing a couple rooms, or doing a small space, you're probably looking at, that $100,000 range. But if you're doing entire remodel of a new facility, you're probably more in that $1 million range.
at least, yeah, thing going up every day.
Yeah.
Really.
So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. Don't
I'm
have,
supportive of helping childcare, I don't think this is the body that has the capacity to really move the needle.
Yeah, we could make a suggestion to the city council or something like that on
Grant
sack and whack
applications.
or something like that, so in-kind services or something where we could help them without forking out money out of our pocket, right?
It could be a case-by-case basis, if it's part of a giant project again, like Country Manor, or, a big facility coming in. I don't think we had Annie's on there. I looked at the list.
is that just outside of town or is that in?
It's still in Brainerd, cause
Is
it's CLC campus.
Oh, it's a
There's-
CLC
there's
campus.
two.
Okay.
And that's
Oh,
the only
okay.
one, so it helps the numbers a
Yep.
little bit, but, yeah, I think case-by-case basis for if they wanna come to the EDA or the city in any way, I think our staff can kinda come back to us and give us options on things we can help them with. I don't think they're knocking down the front door right now, as far as like.
That's not maybe the
100
biggest
daycare
issue.
centers.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of what I'm hearing is maybe no policy for it, not bringing back any type of, $150,000 in fees are waived or anything like that. It's more of a case-by-case basis. Is that?
I don't know. I feel like we should craft some kind of a body to this, because every instance is gonna be a little bit different. It could be a small facility in an existing building that's already there. You got new construction with Country Manor. So those two aren't really analogous to each other, so, I don't know.
Yeah, it could be something similar to River Trails where, land use permits are waived as well as $150,000 in construction value. And then part of the policy, you could come to the EDA and ask for additional funding if needed. That could be a potential. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
That'd be my thinking, is something more just linear and applicable to every applicant. They just, whatever box they check for the scope of work, they're able to.
Okay. Well, I'll start working on
Can we
that.
craft something
Yep,
that
I'll
we can look
draft
at?
something, and then it can either be amended, done a little bit differently, or just don't really like the look of it. So
So the idea here is we've got like a list of items where we could potentially put some money here. So I'm gonna just ask the group, how do we want to score this? Or how do we want to craft a way to say what's more important to us than the other? Certainly one thing we could do is we could take this sheet, we could put our names at the top, we could just, everyone fill out their own sheet and score 1 through 6, what's most important to them, least important. Have somebody tally it, and that might spit out some results for us. That's tell us what the group might be leaning for. If you
and the last one though is the facade grant. We haven't really gone
Oh,
over
yeah,
that
sorry,
yet.
yeah, I've got to jump
Yep,
ahead.
yep. No, but I think that could be a good idea, just to kind of figure out where the priorities are. Facade grant included the pictures. There's one that still hasn't been done yet. Certainly, I think the one that was on Washington Street there had a pretty big impact for look. I know Marie could maybe talk about what that business is in there, some type of laser
Yeah,
design.
I actually, I haven't visited them since they redid it. It's kind of funny because I happened to be like looking at that location when it was up for rent just because I was curious, and I just happened to mention to the building owner, I'm like, yeah, there's an EDA grant, and now to see it done, it's,
Yeah, I think
great,
I think it worked really well. The system worked really well as a first come first serve. So there wasn't scoring or anything like that on it. The one, if I were to recommend a tweak, would probably be this one. So this is industrial. It still is a facade. It was a landscape. But in the future, do you have a requirement that maybe 50% of that should be vegetation, shrubs and trees? Yeah. So
How much money did we give this one?
Say 2,000, something like that. It wasn't the 5,000. So that's where I picture, like, maybe for eligible costs, trees and shrubs have to be at least 50% of the cost, something like that, to really have some type of landscape standards with it. So with that, we'll open it up.
Going to the
Oh yeah,
landscape.
yeah.
I was just gonna say with the landscaping, like, that would not work functionally to add any landscaping to that last one.
No, it wouldn't. But it might.
It would hinder.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to, add shrubs, so then it would maybe disqualify a project like that. So I think, in my opinion, the facade grant is really meant to really enhance
Beautify.
businesses and not just be functional. So,
It's beautification.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the facade grant, netted some good projects in town. I would be supportive of doing it again. I think it goes hand in hand with the improved signage, and I think we should get that ordinance hammered out before we figure out what it is we want people to do with their facades, and then offer a grant for them to do what it is we want. Instead of throw a bunch of money at facades and then say, wait, no, we want you to do this.
Yeah, what you just did now doesn't meet our new.
Right, so I think we start with getting those standards in place, and then
Combine those.
I think they're the same thing.
The facade and the signage.
So facade we've worked on quite a bit. I think we need to maybe tweak what that grant is maybe eligible for. Again, kind of relook at that and see if we want to tweak that a little bit. Before just moving forward with it, and we could bring that to the next meeting. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. Really trying to put money towards signage this year until that.
approximately take to get something like that hammered out? Because I'm just wondering, like, do we get
2-3
that
years.
squared away, and then, because I would like to see the facade improvement grant just kind of channeled into the Washington corridor. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think.
If we hold those funds and just have a bigger pot of funds for when the reconstruction project's happening, and then stuff figured out, that's kind of the direction I'd like to go, but.
I know there is some discussions though about potentially increased, design standards along like Washington Street. I know Kevin, you kind of brought that up as well. So that could be, potentially.
I got a lot of stuff on my plate, so I haven't really gotten anywhere with it. But
Yeah, I know we've talked about that a little bit.
kicking around an idea that our corridor zonings, our gateway zonings would have to meet a little higher, a different threshold for facade.
And they already have a little bit, but, you know, still it's maybe not enough, to what we're looking for.
And I think that it's I think that it's relatively important, the timing is important, because what I see happening is with the parking being removed off 210, a lot of what is currently front doors is now gonna become a back door. So my leaning is long-term, what's gonna happen is these businesses that used to have parking on 210 are gonna now put their business entrances off of Kingwood or off of the backside. And the roadside is now gonna become the offices and the backside, and that's gonna turn into solid signage. So that's one of my concerns with all of those 210 businesses that enter off of 210, will not be doing that anymore, most likely. They won't be asking customers to park in the back, walk around the block and come in. They're gonna redo their buildings to
A
come
lot of
in.
it's already that way.
A lot of it is, like the pawn shop, the shoe shop, they're gonna be losing all that parking right
That
through there.
block has quite a few.
Yep, those are all going away, so, my concern is that we should be ahead of this, so the back
And we
sides of those-
already do have some glazing requirements and that type of thing, so that's, Duncan had to
That
put
helps
in
a lot.
more glass
Yep.
than what they wanted to put in, on, you know, for instance, they had to do a little bit more design standards than what would be
Yep.
typical in some other areas, but I think it could be improved as well.
I guess we'd hope that we'd be explaining to businesses that they're widening the sidewalks, so we're hoping that it's gonna be more walkable, and we're also improving access to the bike trails, so we're hoping we're getting more bike traffic down there. So I would hope we're communicating that so that people are still focusing on having nice facades on the street side and not shifting to what you're talking about.
It'd be the hope, but I mean, we see it all the time when we went through like parking lot work, and people won't walk literally 50 feet, they don't have to, right? So, it's just it's a frustrating thing, but.
Yeah, and the sidewalk widening on that side of the street isn't happening, right? It's a net sidewalk widening. This side currently has 6 feet, this side currently has 2 feet. We're gonna go to 6 feet and 6 feet. So the north side might gain to 8, but it's not gonna be much different on that side. It's more the south side of Washington Street. There's really a lack of the side. But Eric, with the second era of the small cities, that you focus on residential, but a lot of times.
Can be some commercial
You'll do
facade
some commercial in
improvement too.
there. So we can include that into like a facade program on
Right.
Washington Street that second year.
That's the intent.
So we've successfully combined the facade, the signage, and Washington Street all into one.
I just have one comment, like, I love everything that we're doing here, but there's a couple industries that are, not being focused on, and that's the industrial. Like, obviously, this is priority with what's going on with the Washington Street reconstruction, but I don't wanna leave out the industrial areas that need assistance as well, that have a lot of employees that are hired there. Buildings might not be beautiful, but they hire a lot of people versus a retail that has maybe 5. So I don't know if that's a discussion for now, but maybe in the future we should start looking at, because we want those big hubs coming in
Yep.
as well. So maybe we should start looking at something that way too. Focus number 1, but we need to bring in that
I
industrial
agree
as
too,
well.
but I think that if we're attracting these bigger businesses to come locate here, they're gonna wanna see an active business district, someplace where they wanna relocate and where their employers are gonna wanna live, and so that's why I kinda feel like the priority needs to be on the corridor and just getting that improved, and hopefully that will attract those businesses in turn, so.
I think given the Washington Street project, yeah.
Yeah.
Do some focus on there.
That's
But I absolutely
absolutely.
agree with you, Tony, that and EDA is doing things, we're listing the industrial park sites and we're trying to attract development, but I think there is more we should be doing, especially with the Independence Day, not Independence, what was it called, Day of Liberation yesterday? All the industrial jobs are moving there. Good news.
Well, the industrial park, I don't have a vote on all this, but industrial park, the roads are terrible back there. The UPS space out there, those people are parking wherever and whenever they want. It's chaos back there, you know, which is, I think, but I would tell you 40% of your city employees are employed back there.
Yeah.
So big picture, that's for me.
Yeah.
I don't have a vote in this, but I agree
Yeah.
with Tony. There's a lot to, I'm out there a lot and
It's
we got
rough
business.
back there.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
But
That's where the higher
It's a
paid
tough
jobs
thing.
are.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing because we have limited money, so
For sure.
we're the people that are charged with trying to make the biggest impact with the money that we have. And what is the biggest change we can make with our limited resources to do? So, I agree with you because everyone pays into all this money, it's the entire city, right, basically, right? So, when we expanded the facade, we expanded that into the industrial district.
It was
right?
city- it was
So that-
citywide.
Citywide, and
Yeah.
the idea there is everyone's paying into it, everyone should be eligible for it, Gabe, you brought that up, right? So,
And we got one industrial park facade?
yeah, we got a sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
So you can look at that and say, well, you know, that isn't really what we were hoping would happen, but technically, you know.
Well, and it's helping people be safe
Yeah,
too, like there's a
understood.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has
so-
added to the,
So,
usability of the site.
So, yeah, I agree, Washington, because of what's going on, that's priority number one, but I don't want us to forget about the industrial, because that's how we can start pulling new businesses that aren't necessarily in the corridor, but they add to the corridor.
Yeah, and maybe, maybe because of the Washington Street project, you really focus in the next couple of years on that part of it, but through that, as we kind of get that laid out, we start coming up with ideas for, what's after that Washington Street project. And yeah, maybe it's targeted industrial areas.
We have two undeveloped areas of industrial that have beautiful walking areas already built into them that we can't attract businesses to for some reason. We have programs where you can buy them for $1 an acre if you're bringing jobs in. There's not a ton more that I can think of that we can do to get stuff coming in there.
workforce housing, that's my
Workforce
opinion.
housing is big.
That
But
is,
we gotta do
my
what we
opinion,
can
that
to
is the
attract
bottleneck in our city, is the workforce housing. If you own a company that's gonna have 300 employees, and you're thinking about relocating to any city, the very first thing you do is where are my workers gonna live? We are dramatically under what we should be for workforce housing, and I think that's a huge part of it, so.
And the big reason that a lot of this workforce housing, like the big apartment complexes that are coming in Baxter, is because they have green space that's just ready to dig.
Shovel ready.
There's nothing, maybe except for a few trees that they have to move, and we have a lot of infrastructure that you have to work around when you're putting in an apartment building. I would like to see more apartment buildings closer to downtown, keep more people downtown and support these small businesses that we have here. But I think we need to start opening up to the possibility of some of those more open spaces having these apartment buildings.
One big one. I mean, we can build apartment buildings in some of those commercials, we've kind of set those up,
Yep.
but some of those, I think that maybe people just don't know. And if the housing isn't there, the business doesn't want, the business wants to see the housing there first, I think, before they move in, they want to see.
There's already a need for it, so
Yeah.
we should approve
We-
most housing projects that come up. But
Yeah, and me and Eric, we'll have developers approach us from time to time. We drive them around the entire city, showing them our available sites. It seems what they're most attracted to are ones that are potentially easier sites to build on and then closer to amenities. So, we show them the industrial park, we let them know that, you could potentially get this at a very discounted rate, but it's not next to the amenities.
Right.
Bike trails, parks, that type of thing. So, they pretty, it's pretty fast when they kind of zero in on the areas that they're looking at. I know one that I'm gonna be working really hard on this year is the one, that's owned by the school district north of Buffalo Hills Park, trying to figure out what we can do with that. So there's a couple contractors, that are looking to, kind of for the next project, both Level Contracting and, Tom Dean of Northtown. So certainly gonna try to be working with them on potentially doing something with that piece of land, cause that one is attractive to some of the developers that have come through, so.
Northtown, there's still quite a bit of land there where you could fit multiple apartment buildings.
Yeah, and Tom Dean has been buying up, they were owned by some other people, so he's been buying up,
Oh, okay,
some of the ones that were owned by others.
closer to Wise Road.
Yeah, I think those will be probably the last one, that's kind of more of an association. Oh, you're talking about the available land?
Well, just the land And there's been streets there. I worked there for the original developer back in 2006.
So yeah, the one that's close to Beaver Dam Road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so that's like an association. Maybe I'll talk to Tom Dean to see if he does have plans on any of that area right there. There was some that's kind of up in the north in the cul-de-sac areas that were owned by other people, and he has been buying those up to develop.
So he's gonna continue the same pattern?
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just expound on that a little bit. The reason that those developers typically look for those amenities or trails, it's when they're looking to get grant funding or some of these low-income housing tax credits or just tax credits, because when you're closer to trails or closer to downtown, that's when you start to get more points for those applications. You know, again, we, as a city, as a community, if we talk about tax credit projects, I think those are a little bit different than market rate projects, and there will be differing amounts of support for either or for those different developments. You know, certainly from the HRA side of things, number one, we certainly like to see redevelopment, and if redevelopment is market rate, we're happy to push that forward, but obviously the majority of what we do is try to house the lowest of income earners, and certainly look at tax credit projects as something that are very viable in the city. But again, that there is a little bit of a competing interests on market rate versus tax credits. The tax credits, they're going to get better points if they're closer to downtown areas, closer to walkability, closer to amenities. Market rate can really kind of go to that greenfield, where it's easier for them to develop. They're getting that private financing, or they've got a little bit easier financing path. So it's a delicate mix.
Which I do think could be interesting. There, obviously the state of Minnesota has had lots of money devoted to this the last 2 years, so developers, we're probably looking for those areas rather than, the other areas, but I think that money's really gonna dry up in
Right,
the
the
Minnesota
workforce
budget.
housing development program, that was the last year was their biggest year, and now they're back to $2 million a year, and that just doesn't impact the statewide need for housing. But understand that developers are still very much looking at
We had one
any
developer, I
available
know that was developing up in the Duluth area, so they weren't looking as much on the grant side of things from the state of Minnesota. They were looking at, well, what does the city have to offer for land?
Tell
Because
them
that's
about
what Duluth.
Trailside?
What's that?
You tell them about Trailside.
We have that included in there as well.
I think Wright Street is also a potential. I
Yep.
do personally.
So
but-
Trailside's concept plan is gonna help kind of BPU figure out its infrastructure. We are getting close in that area, to really needing some major upgrades to do some type of major development in that area. So, Country Manor, well, not maxing it out, to do something very large up in that area is probably gonna be some significant upgrades for water pressure.
Agreed, workforce housing is a huge thing. Well, however we're talking, is it workforce, is it market rate, is it tax credit? We know there's a huge impact on development and economic development. It's a little bit cliche to say that housing is economic development, but it is certainly on the forefront if you're not getting enough housing for potential workers, it's pretty difficult to get that economic development.
But yeah, I think again, we're looking at, for sure, trying to do a roundtable this year. I talked to Jennifer about this rather than a business roundtable, doing a developer roundtable and getting Tom Dean, Monty there, some of the other ones that I know in town that are some of our smaller developers that are doing infill. Just to let them know about, one of the things that we're working on with the EDA that's gonna get done this year is allowing people to put their own property kind of up on a map saying that, hey, it's available, contact me. Maybe it doesn't have to be listed by a realtor, but it's still on this page. We're gonna be mailing out things to landlords saying you have potential development opportunities. Also letting, kind of infill developers know about that. But I do think there's, and one that I'm gonna really be working on is that Buffalo Hills one. So we'll see if we can, I do think Monty and both Tom Dean are interested in that one, so.
Is that currently parkland? Has it been?
It is zoned parkland right now, so it would have to be rezoned.
Park has to give it.
Is, so Park would have to be okay with some type of switch or land swap. Preliminarily, seemed like it might work, but yeah, there'd be some details that have to be worked out, cause right now there
Parks
really
get the
isn't.
money or the city get the money for their land?
Well, the part that is still woods was never dedicated. It was
To
the
the
park, the park was,
The city gets the money.
the park part that's
not on the
actually a
park, right?
park that's developed was dedicated to the parks. But the woods next to it, that's like 10 acres, and then that wasn't dedicated. And then there's like 20 acres. owned by
There's
the
20
city.
acres north of it, yeah, so really the best access point's gonna be on that east side of Buffalo Hills Park where we have trees right now.
So are Monty and Tom looking at building the same type of products they've been building, or looking at multifamily?
Potentially, you know, I kind of floated around the ideas of duplexes, you know, row homes, maybe fourplexes, that type of thing, so.
And Monty
Something,
is,
something to create a little bit more density.
My feeling is, you could probably weigh in on this a little bit, but single-family dwellings is becoming almost, if it's at market rate, it's dead, almost dead.
Infill, yeah,
impossible.
infill, you're not
It's
seeing
dead
that.
impossible. You
Unless
can't,
it's one by one family ordering their own house.
a spec, spec build or something like that. But as a speculative list sale, nobody's wanting to fork out $400 to $600 for a basic single-family dwelling, hoping to sell it. So that's why you're seeing, in the metro, it's all multi-unit, 28 unit, 32, 48 units. That's where the math begins to tip back towards the developer being able, at market rate, to turn a profit. I
Right
think-
now, we are seeing a lot of duplexes on our kind of 50 by 150 lots. You know, a number of them have come before, city council and the planning commission. You know, with the one person on Chicago, their idea was to have it split down the center so they can start out renting the property, make some money on that, have it as an investment, and then later sell each unit individually to families, so that could be something used in the future. So yeah, I think we got about 25 minutes left.
Yeah,
So now kind of figuring out, you know, where our priorities are.
yeah, and I'm totally open to how we do this. Do we just keep talking through it? Do we score it somehow, or however?
I think Gabe was right, we combined some of these in this discussion. And the facade grant improvement, what did we spend, like 20,000 last year?
22, isn't it?
Well, yeah, just over 20,000 there is to maximize all 5 projects. And then there was $2,000 from Blade Deck for the administration part of it.
Okay, and I think that could go in either direction. I think we could spend more on that if we wanted to. But then there's the Washington Street mitigation plan. It's super expensive if we're gonna pay for the whole thing. That's like the whole budget. But we gotta chip in somewhere. We start at saying 50% of that we wanna help cover, and that number can go up or down from there based on grants that might come in. And then that whole project could be scaled up or down.
It's kind of a 2-year commitment, so if we do that in the first year, do we feel like it's gonna be the same need in the second year? Or do we feel like we're gonna make this big push in the front, on the first year,
Yep.
push a bunch of money into this, and then the second year is gonna be kinda coasting off of money spent? Is that what you
Correct,
think,
yeah.
Tyler?
Yep, 100%.
Okay.
I don't know if we can put an exact number on it today. We could just say, yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna pay $90,000 right now. And then we would have 13,000 left for facade improvements and signage and all that stuff, so.
Well, we still have to keep 100 in reserve, so what is the
Well,
actual
you
number?
still- I would
roughly
say
in
you have to
100?
at least probably keep the 50 in, you know, it'd probably be better to keep at least 70 in reserves, somewhere in the middle.
Spend it all, we just have to borrow the money from somebody.
If you did half of the, if we committed to say, we'll potentially do half of that, so it's 45,000, and then you do, another 22,000 in facade improvements again like last year. Or we could shift that a little bit and say 40 and 30 or whatever. That would get us right around that number you wanna keep in.
I'm gonna ask I'm gonna ask the question of the 3 city council members that are sitting in this room. Would you rather have this, and I mentioned this to James when we were on the phone, would you rather have this funded, a portion of this funded by the EDA or by the city? I asked the question just because, is this how you wanna use the EDA's money?
Right.
Or is this a project that the city itself should somehow support? And when you're talking,
Yeah.
whether it's 10,000, 20,000, whatever the number is it better served as funding that should come directly from the city's budget because of the impact that it's gonna have on the city? Or is it,
We have our
The
PNF
EDA's
chair
dollars.
right here.
Well, to me,
Yeah,
it's
well,
the
my
same, it's the
answer-
same pot of money, right? Whether,
It's
Not
not
really.
though. My answer would depend on what Joe Langle says, because a city cannot fund a chamber of commerce. So is this legally considered funding a Chamber of Commerce, or is this a program that is happened to be run by the Chamber of Commerce? So the city may not be able to, EDA may be able to,
That's a good point.
depending on what the attorney says.
But the EDA gets their money from the city, right? So
Same taxpayers.
Right.
So, you know, last year, we kept the EDA kind of level. So there is options to, you know, to kind of backfill what's being taken out of the general fund by increasing the amount that the EDA essentially receives from
And that's
from
what I'm
the
saying,
city of
it's the
Brainerd.
same pot of money, right? So EDA could spend more, city of Brainerd could move more money to the EDA, right? We could make
We
that
could increase
choice.
the levy to 220 or whatever, right?
Exactly,
This is
and-
50
and-
grand.
There's a
EDA
maximum, but I think the city council chipping into this is a lot smaller burden. But what are we gonna spend? Are we gonna spend $100,000 on facade improvements? I mean, we could. If we got this thing nailed down and we really got a good sign ordinance in place and we said we'll help the cost of 50% all the way up to $100,000 and really make an improvement in the city of Brainerd. I think that would be awesome if we did that. Is it responsible? I don't know. It depends on, like what Gabe said, if we can chip in from the city or maybe use part of the EDA funds and part of just general funds, then it's a lot easier.
So what I'm maybe
One way
kind
or
of
another,
hearing,
it has to get done.
yeah, what I'm maybe kind of hearing is, you know, somewhere maybe around that 40 for the,
210?
yeah, for the 210, maybe around that 20 again for the facade for this year. We have that program kind of ready to go with maybe some tweaks. And then the signage, we still have to work through. Maybe that's kind of a component for 2026. We work through what our design standards are going to be this year. And then have, you know, kind of work in the winter time about some type of grant program for the following year for facade and signage and 210. Then we kind of look at how, you know, we maybe want to kind of budget these throughout those, this year, 2026 and 2027, and come up with some type of budget memo for that.
Childcare is more incentives on the.
And that's more just kind of, yeah,
Permitting, that kind
Yep,
of
just
thing,
creating a
everything we can do
policy
there.
for that and having the EDA review it.
Yes, but I'm still in no one spending any money on facade improvement grants until we have design standards of signage.
Agreed,
Because I
and
don't
So, yeah, we
wanna-
can-
I
yeah,
totally
we
agree.
can-
I think we fast track that
We can
as
wait.
fast as we can go,
Okay.
is what I feel like, get it through planning and
See what
zoning.
Crosby has in their ordinance and see if.
Yeah,
if
I'll
that
pull it,
fits.
I'll pull it today and see what they got. I'll call them and talk to them today. See what he's got.
So what I've
Good luck.
what I kind of heard,
I know a couple guys.
There's not a city administrator.
I know that, but I know the guy who knows the guy, so.
Interim.
For a while, he's got-
They
So-
use, so twice we've had the Minnesota design team come in Crosby, and Minnesota design team did help with a lot of those design standards.
Yep.
So that is part of it. They came in 2010 and they just were there last summer.
That's the
again.
document I'm looking for. I
Yep.
know it exists, so,
We have it,
yeah. You have it?
100% I
Oh,
have it.
you just saved me some work today.
Yeah,
Can you give it to James?
100%. Yep.
Yeah, I told you I'd take care of it.
I didn't want to jump in too early, but yes.
We fast tracked that. That was good.
so
I will
what,
send it to you.
what I'm hearing is that the sign improvement is number one. Number two is the facade. Number three is Washington Street, for the reconstruction. And then number four is the mitigation plan. That's what I'm hearing is the structure. Is that correct?
I would have voted Washington Street mitigation plan one, improved signage,
Wait.
1A, 1B, whatever, and then facade improvement after that.
Okay.
What's the money we're putting towards the Washington Street mitigation plan?
We'll need to look at the numbers at our next meeting.
We can look at the numbers at our next meeting.
And you want to
It
get
seems
the
like
legal
it's
advice?
around that 40 number and see, yeah, we can see how that works out.
40 number.
Kind of see,
okay.
yeah,
I'll
it
get
kind of
4 votes on the
seems,
council.
the way it's going is we'll, you know, we're working through, some ordinances here, so, you know, where does that line up with construction season and then bringing it back to the EDA for grants and stuff, you know, does this $19,000 in excess just go into the general fund for, again, kind of maybe more of a robust program for 2026 and 2027? That kind of remains to be seen, so we'll kind of figure out where everything lines up on that, you know. The facade improvement grant, you know, by the time we have our next June meeting, the ordinance probably won't be ready by then. So then you're looking at, you know, the September meeting, and now that's kind of past construction season for facades and signage, so, you know, does that money then get rolled over into, you know, kind of the next year, unless we were to hold a special meeting?
I would
That's what I'd
be,
like to
I
see,
would
is
be,
just pull it and do it bigger.
Do it during reconstruction.
so you're saying have
So
a
it seems
special
like get
meeting?
everything worked out, so it seems like get everything worked out this year, and then have that excess $19,000 pooled into the money for the 2026 and 2027 project.
But at the same time, if the city council agrees to chip in for the big costs on mitigation and all that, do we still do the same program as last year? I think maybe we do hold back, or we just make that program $20,000 program this year and just restrict it a little bit more than what we did last year. But I would lean in more towards just putting more money towards it next year. But at the same time, that a lot of that depends on whether or not legally we can chip in from the city council.
Hypothetically, we don't get the facade and the signage through ordinance, that's gonna take time.
It's gonna take
We would
time.
have a direction of where we're going, is there a way to incentivize and say, when people come in to do a sign, say, hey, look, this is our current ordinance, this is the way we're going. There's potentially, if you can get more towards where we're going, there may be, is there a way we can incentivize that with some of the funding to say, okay, the people that are gonna go more the direction we go, they're more eligible
How about-
towards the Main Street funding. You know
How
what I
about
mean?
if somebody puts in a sign this year or upgrades their facade this year that meets the standards of whatever that is?
They backload
We
it.
could backload it next year, 50% of their cost up to $2,000.
Potentially.
One thing I think I'd like everybody to think about with the facade and the signage grants is, I'm not sure if anybody in here is familiar with the organization called the Oswego Renaissance Association from Oswego, New York. They've had grant programs for redevelopment. They lost all their industry when the shipping industry was beat out by the train, so they've been dealing with this a lot longer than we have. But they have a grant organization for facade improvements in residential areas and homes. And they don't just give grants to a home here, a home there, they require blocks to get together, talk to each other. And if you can get 4 homes on one block to paint your house this summer, we'll give you each $2,000. So I think if we could do that with our commercial and industrial facade improvement or signage improvement and say, hey, if we can get 4 on this block, we'll give you all money. But if we're just doing one here, one here, one here in town, it's not as impactful.
I can think of a few blocks that we could do that.
Something to
Yeah.
consider. I don't know. I like how they do it because it is an impact in one region.
What was it called? The
Oswego.
Oswego, New York. Renaissance Association.
I don't think it would take us long to get the general direction of where we're going with the facades and the signage. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be able to just pluck it, make a few tweaks to it.
And if you wanna work with us again, we'd love it, we can, and everything's set, we can turn it, we can make the tweaks as you see them, and we can have it turned on
I think,
tomorrow.
I think the good thing is,
Simple. for
again,
us.
maybe this year, working, through the next few months here, kind of through the summer, getting everything lined up. That way, when MnDOT kind of has everything ready to go, know exactly, kind of the timelines and where things are getting shut down. These businesses are gonna be ready to go at, January 1st to look at these, facade improvement grants, all that type of stuff, so they're ready to go when construction season starts. So it's not, if you roll the grant out in June, it kind of leaves businesses scrambling, trying to line contractors up before construction season ends. So if you can get this ready for January 1st of next year, let's say, or even sooner, it allows businesses to plan a little bit better.
The summer is the construction season for most of that stuff,
Yep.
for sure, so.
Okay,
Okay.
I feel pretty good.
Anybody have anything else they? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Unless there's anything
Thank you very
else,
much.
We're looking for, I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Workshop.
Adjourn, yeah, adjourn, thank you.